afternoon. My name is Nathan Puglisi, and this is my answer for Simulation 1 for managerial problem solving. Firstly, a quick rundown of my methodology and approach to this assessment. I defined the problem, I then brainstormed potential causes, I then came up with some problem solving strategies, and then I selected my approach, I outlined what my communication improvement strategy will look like, and I came up with a timeline to implement this plan. So, how do I define the problem? The problem is essentially communication between two teams, specifically between the new team and the old team, and this came about through a recent merger. If you drill right down into the problem, you'll actually see that the real issue is the access to knowledge. And this is a problem because it is actually restricting the performance of both teams. So what possible causes could there be for this problem? Well, the most obvious would be that each team is in different locations. They're in different buildings. And this limits the amount of face-to-face time that they could be actually having. Secondly is the management and the lack of communication and the coordination of the team. This has now become my problem because I am now the manager. And thirdly, I believe that the organisational structure in itself is not allowing the communication flow to work in a positive manner. So this will need to be addressed. And lastly, the organisational culture. This is a recent merger. There are effectively two different companies with two different sets of corporate values and team values that are now expected to work together. There is conflict within the teams. So what strategies did I select to try and solve this problem? Well, out of the generic strategies, I chose 4. The first one was lateral thinking. Now, I chose lateral thinking because I like the concept of actually thinking in a sideways way and how to address the problem by looking at those issues. So the first one I came up with idea was using technology and a platform like Asana. Other ideas I came up with was multi-teams. So effectively taking 2 team members from this team, 2 team members from this team, putting them together and then saying, right, you guys work it out. Strategy 2, the brainstorming. I tried to remove all judgment from my idea problem solving process, and I just rattled off some ideas with no judgment whatsoever. So firstly, I came up with video conferencing. I thought about reframing the problem, whose problem is it, aligning the project goals and objectives together, weekly meetings, revise organisational structure, etc. Strategy 3 was dissolving. Now, when you're dissolving a problem, effectively you're taking away that tension so it no longer exists. So I was looking at a process that would actually means that I was running towards the actual problem. So I came up with 3 ideas to address that. So firstly, move the teams into the same workspace so they can change buildings. Secondly, the mentoring and coaching approach. And that would really mean that I'd actually have to, as the manager, evaluate their work breakdown structures and align them together so we could achieve the desired outcome. And lastly, the hierarchy, the organisational structure approach, which would be to look at who is talking to who refers information, who has line management, and playing around with that hierarchy until we get it right so the communication flow is going in the direction that it needs to be. Strategy 4 is concept thinking. Now, concept thinking is a design approach to problem solving, and essentially you're trying to come up with a holistic understanding of what the problem is. So I had 3 suggestions for this area, and one was centered around rewarding knowledge sharing, and you could do this by actually introducing a set of rewards, or you could come up with some disincentives for sharing and making sure that those barriers are removed. The second aspect I thought about was motivating knowledge sharing, and this would be achieved by implementing a training and development program. And lastly, the knowledge sharing meetings. So, and my different suggestions for this was communities of practice, so networks, for example, Asana, which I mentioned before, online forums, or have a database which can be shared in between the 2 different geographies locations and the two different teams. Now, I have to select an approach. Now, I selected the concept thinking approach because firstly, I believe that this really addressed what the real problem was, and that was knowledge sharing. And secondly, I believe that this approach was the most fair and the most equal and created the most amount of positive opportunities for both teams. When you look at something like the dissolving strategy I came up with for moving the teams into the same workspace, well, this is a win-lose. One team is effectively being told that they have to move locations. So this is not a win-win strategy at all. And lastly, I thought that strategy 4, the concept thinking approach, was more cost effective and time effective. So moving on to the communication improvement strategy, this will be outlined further in the written report, but this is probably where I'm heading with this. So in that plan, I will develop these areas. So targets, budgets, schedules, steps, resources, training, and the measurement. So I would bring both teams together and would actually put all these tasks down, create our next steps program, and align them to our key milestones. So when we get to the evaluation of our project, we can actually see their successes. So as for the timeline and the implementation of this plan, well, short term, we'd have to address the knowledge sharing meetings immediately. They would just have to happen so we could have success. Secondly, we'd have to straight away introduce knowledge sharing, motivating the team through training and development. That is essential, and that may be in the early days just about the importance of it, and also might be about how we're going to do it, and also might actually unpack some of the how to use the software if it's a software program like Asana. And lastly was the 1 year out project, which would be the rewarding knowledge sharing. So that would take a lot longer to achieve because we'd actually have to define what the rewards are, or define what the disincentives would actually be. And that's all. I look forward to your feedback so I can actually progress this into my written report. Thanks.